Hey everybody. We've done so much in the last year on AI and lots of different aspects of emerging media, but we really haven't talked a lot about digital communities and organizing digital communities. And if you are a regular attendee on these webinars, you know that a lot of times we look to the video game industry and video game companies as ways or as models for managing the future of media. And one of the things that game companies do a lot of is managing their communities. So when this topic popped up, when Ethan and Francesca volunteered to do this, it was super exciting. And also because they used Discord, which is the platform that Nebraska Public Media Labs team uses to just that's our water cooler. That's where we have our community. Most of you or a lot of you use Slack. That's our Slack. And for us, it's much more of a blend of social media and work. And so there's a lot more personality that I think comes out there. So anyway, that's a long-winded endorsement of the topic today. So I'm gonna let Ethan, who you may remember from our one of our spring webinars, I think it was April, Ethan, and new to our PMI webinars, Francesca Finzi. I'll let you both take it away with introductions.
Francesca, do you mind if I sort of do a little top
Please go
level? Okay,
first.
cool, awesome. Okay, this actually might connect a little bit with a lot of the stuff we're talking about more broadly about uh, where we are right now in terms of, not just funding environment, but public media and the use and the role and what we can and should be doing going forward. And so one of the things that you might hear us talking about, or maybe the a backdrop of what we're talking about, is that this is trying to build a digital community can be it should be, it's sort of a critical um, piece for all of us as we're thinking about our representation in the digital space. But it's actually it could be more. It could be something we all focus on more as we're at with in a moment with like limited resources or reduced resources, because there's there are opportunities to, a community is sort of fully formed. It's not just us delivering, broadcasting, telling people about things. It's the community itself creating the content and being part of the creators. And so there's a value that the community itself provides that can allow for all of us to think about this in an ongoing way. So I just wanted to sort of flag that as we're thinking about the moment. There's actually a backdrop to the moment that this actually connects with that's worth highlighting. Um, Rewind 3 or 4 years ago, we were trying to think about, hey, everyone talks about the future state of what you provide as a broadcast media legacy producer. And KQED as a dual licensee TV and radio, one of the things we provide is that we have a daily call-in radio show, 2 hours, called Forum, that is incredibly well loved and trusted and appreciated by our community. It's, sort of one of the tent post programs that we have. And when you're talking about what are the things you can do in this other digital representation environment, I think oftentimes people say podcasts or time shifted, and all those things are great and worth doing and whatever. But we sort of figured that one of the things that Forum provides is actually that community, is that a place for everyone to share what they're thinking and to be a part of the conversation, not just and a time shifted nature of like taking this thing and putting it in podcast or in on-demand form actually reduce or we have struggled to try to figure out a way to do that, and allow for it to be sort of community focused and conversation based. And so instead of going, hey, how do we time shift this thing? We said, let's steer into the community aspect of the thing and try to maybe build a online representation of that sort of like collaborative, trusted, vibrant space that a conversation show, a public affairs conversation show like Forum provides. And so we sort of explored a lot of different things, whether, the platforms, the extrapolation, the way to do it. And we hit upon, and we're actually given uh, grants from both CPB and Knight Foundation to do this was to build a Discord, which, as Chad points out, is like not only is it like sort of kind of like Slack, it is actually sort of connected very deeply with the video game industry. And if any of you are subscribers of individual podcasts. Like I use this example all the time. Francesca's going to roll her eyes, but I'm a huge college football fan, and I am a member. I am a listener and an audience member of several college football podcasts, and all of them. One of the basis of their revenue strategy is, hey, if you become a monthly sustainer, stealing our business model, gosh darn it, you get access to this Discord that we've built and it it's community, it's audience, and all those other things. And so we figured let's try that out with forums. So then Francesca came on board, formulated this with one of our hosts, Alexis Madrigal, and really then brought it to where we are today, which is an significant evolution, really revolution in terms of how we are interacting in this space. And so I'll let Francesca sort of walk you through that evolution.
Thanks, Ethan. So I guess Ethan just did a wonderful job of setting up what incentivized us to pursue this project and what we were trying to do with a digital community. But to kind of like to really illustrate it, to give a sense of what these kinds of spaces really look like and their potential, I want you to take like a little bit of a mental time travel with me. Let's go back to November 2024. It's election night. And for me, my night started with a cup of coffee. The newsroom is buzzing. People are getting ready for a night of election coverage. And I am sitting down in front of my computer, settling in for 5 hours of talking to strangers on the internet, which may not be your dream scenario on election night. But for me, it's really fun. And that's because I am, as Ethan mentioned, KQED's digital community producer. That's a new role that we created in 2023 with that grant support when we decided to launch this experimental digital community on the chat app Discord. I'm so thrilled to hear that Chad and others have used this as well. So like, I know the nerds are in the room. Good. But for those of you who are uninitiated, Discord is a chat platform that, as others have mentioned, was often used by gamers for text and video conversations. We settled on this as a space for KQED's listeners for a few reasons. Partly because it's a fun space. I think many of us associate Slack with a workspace, so we wanted to think about this as a recreational community. And then there are some audio and video functions that I'll get into later. But we wanted to use it to connect listeners of Forum's daily call-in news show, Forum. And just to back up and give a little bit more context about what Forum is, Forum's been on our airwaves for over 30 years. It's my personal favorite kind of community radio, live, local. We have 300,000 listeners in the Bay Area, and we hear from so many of them. They call in to talk about everything from the iconic Mission Burrito to California's home insurance crisis. Like, we cover every topic imaginable on this kind of public affairs talk show. However, we've incorporated so many listener comments and calls throughout the years, but we have struggled a little bit up to this point to gather meaningful contributions from social media. Again, I'm speaking to like the period when we were developing this project in 2023. So we saw an opportunity on Discord because these are not the kinds of comments that we can really integrate into the thoughtful discussions that exist on forums airwaves. And we were looking for a way to bring this conversation into a digital era that still preserve that like thoughtful, I guess, good faith engagement. So we saw an opportunity with Discord, and we decided to build this community to bring listeners, journalists, and the guest experts we're having on the show together online and put them into direct conversation with each other. So we created this Discord space, and I do want to emphasize that connectivity is what distinguishes a digital community from a social media account. So online communities are collaborative spaces. They involve real human relationships and like connections that endure over time. So social media accounts, you hopefully are building followers, maybe getting engagement to some degree, but digital communities, you're engaging with and building long-term relationships with the same users over and over. And just after a month of building KQEDs to illustrate what that looks like, I was on a first name basis with some of Forum's online fans. We are seeing people who come back who are listeners of the show or perhaps became excited about the show through our Discord community and then come back over and over to engage with us as producers and content team members, and then also with each other. That's another core element of this. It's another way for people to find others who share their tastes and share their enthusiasm for what we're making. We spent a long portion of this project uncovering layers of the value of what digital communities can bring to public media. I think we had this idea that it was going to be a way to maybe improve our digital comments, maybe reach some younger listeners, but we actually found a different way to categorize online engagement too that I want to talk about just a little bit. So first there was our engagement data. I know this isn't the easiest like snapshot to totally understand, so I'll try to give a brief overview of it here. And if you want to ask more questions about engagement and how we're measuring success on Discord, I'd be happy to talk about that in more detail. So our Discord community now, which has grown a little bit beyond Forum, is just over 2,500 people. So that is just a fraction of Forum's listening audience. If you remember, we reached 300,000 Bay Area listeners, 2,500 people in our Forum Discord community. But these people are super engaged. So we're getting an average, right, of 250 guaranteed interactions with the visitors of our Discord community every day. Those aren't people that we're just reaching with a single post. Those are people who are day in and day out coming in and talking about specifically our programs. Those people are reading, they're reacting, replying to KQED content, interacting with staff. And we found that while I guess I just want to kind of point to this line that says benchmark for Discord. Discord does some of its own tracking on what it considers to be a highly engaged community. And sometimes we exceed those benchmarks, sometimes we don't. But I think that the most important thing to think about if you're considering a project like this is really just to measure against yourself, to measure against the way that you're already engaging with listeners, not to measure against some kind of other external metric of virality. And that is what we eventually started to do as well. So for example, here are how some forum posts have performed around the same time period on Facebook, Twitter, and then I have Instagram as well. And one of the things that I think really stands out here is like each platform, for those of you who've treaded into the engagement waters, they characterize the kinds of engagement differently. But on Facebook, they call engagements like the number of people you've reached. Reactions might be something like likes or another emoji, and then comments are the actual like discussion posts that people put in reaction. You can see here that, I don't know, hopefully you can see without glasses, but Twitter also does the same thing, right? Like engagement, 60 might be the number of people you've reached total. So I just want to compare that back to what we are talking about here with our Discord community. We've reached baseline 250 people every day. And of those, this is the number of people who are the percentage of the people we've reached who are posting something, posting a comment, really engaging with it. These are much higher than what we were previously reaching on these other social media accounts. I also want to talk a little bit about quality because it's not all just about the numbers. We noticed a huge boost in the quality of comments coming through Discord for our shows as well. So community members were writing not just a single sentence or comment, but paragraphs, really sharing personal stories and experiences, asking smart, respectful questions of the guests, of one another, reacting to and supporting one another, interacting across like this story sharing, all those emojis that you see at the bottom here are from other listeners who are responding to this person's post. And then more importantly, people were starting to show genuine ownership over our shared digital community as well. So suggesting improvements for how our channels are organized, proposing new forum show topics and guest ideas. These are our super fans, right? Like these are the people who listen to forum every day. So when they have a great topic or a listener or a guest that they think would be so interesting, they're often really useful suggestions. Not everyone's a winner, but like they're things that people actually really understand the tone and the use of our show because they listen so often. So we're getting like useful contributions in that way. Um, of course, it's not all smooth sailing. Spaces like this, because of the depth and the long-term relationships that I talked about, they also do require moderation. And that means that they require journalists to rethink the way that we're communicating online. I have community producer in my title. I am sure that's not the case for many of you or for many stations. And in addition to that being a part of my title, I'm also a producer of the show, of Forum itself. So we're always splitting our time. We're never like able to just fully dedicate ourselves to just outreach, but it is really important to carve out that space and find a way to make it feel authentic and aligned with the work and the mission that we already have. For a long time, I think that the conventional wisdom has been to not feed the trolls online and to avoid the toxicity of unmoderated comment sections in spaces like Reddit, Discord, other chat rooms. I guess what I hope you all are taking from this and what I'd love to discuss more with you today is to just kind of rethink our relationship to that because many of us have maybe not have been trained not to reveal our personalities online. We want to be perceived as objective. We want to fly above kind of some of these criticisms and not get bogged down in chat room debates and discussions. But there is a reward for slogging into the internet swamp per se and conversing with people. It pays off in terms of audience trust when we do it in a way that feels aligned with the work that we're already doing. To illustrate how we saw that pan out, we asked our digital community, we gave them three surveys at 3-month intervals all throughout the first year of this project. And in those surveys, respondents revealed that 96% of them had high level trust in the behavior and content shared by KQED staff in our Discord. So those were posts being made by our moderators, by the host of forum, by other KQED staff members. They had a huge level of trust. And really interestingly, 91% said that they extended that high level of trust to their peers and other people who they'd interacted with in KQED's digital community just because this was a space that we were hosting and extending kind of our umbrella of trustworthiness to. So we're seeing a positive ripple effect just by hosting online spaces like this by nature of the institutional trust that we have. We also learned some things about how many people were coming to us as existing KQED supporters and how many people were more likely to support, which was really encouraging to us too, as we talk about these potential as we're all scrambling to figure out new funding models and new ways of garnering and like holding on to listener support. So to bring it back to election night 2024, the reason I wanted you to go back in time with me to that one specific moment was because on the night of the election, we ran a 5-hour live stream of KQED's coverage, including these casual virtual chats with reporters in between their filing deadlines. So this was a really shining moment for our Discord. We were in live conversation with the audience as the election results were coming in, not just on the national level, but also on the state and regional level, these propositions that really are meaningful to our direct listenership. And this moment felt really successful in some of the comments that you're seeing here. It felt like it had grown beyond forum and was something that the rest of our KQED newsroom could really make use of. So after this, we expanded KQED's Discord community to encompass some other shows and podcasts. We held meetup events, we did history tours, we did trivia nights in the real world. We tried to see like where that perfect blend of real life and virtual life overlap. We made some mistakes. Some things worked, some things didn't. But we ultimately learned that while moderating spaces like this do take some troubleshooting, we did not nail it on the first or the third or fourth try, we were able to develop some workflows and policies for engaging with people in a space like this and ended up co-writing a set of behavior guidelines with our public community members, who have then gone on to back up our moderation efforts and enforce their own community norms that everyone has kind of agreed to, which I think is really, that's what community is, right? Is like that, this thing that has genuine shared ownership. And we learned that that is something that's true of building spaces in this digital environment as well. Um, just to give an illustration of some of the things that we attempted with our engagement, we had lots of fun things. We did some streaming of events here at KQED. We did some online only things that felt like easier ways for people to participate from home on their own time. And I guess I would just say, to reiterate, I think my biggest piece of advice is to rethink how you're engaging with people online. Really embrace listeners as peers. And also don't be afraid to post more of, I think, your personality and your jokes, your fun facts, the conversation you're having with your colleagues at lunch that is so interesting and funny. Even the editorial discussion you had about whether or not you're covering something the way that you want to, or the way that you think is most representational for the community. Being vulnerable with the public is a part of what builds that trust. Um, and I know it feels very high stakes in this moment. The consequences of making a mistake feel more dire than ever. But I think that if we don't try, we will not learn how to. Grow and be better about connecting with our digital community listeners either. Um,
Francesca, can you go back to the previous page for a half second?
yes,
Um,
absolutely.
the other thing that no, the one forward.
One
Um,
forward.
that one, yes. The other thing I would note is that, and Francesca was talking about, this is as healthy as it is also experimentation and a little bit of a petri dish in terms of us exploring many things at KQED. And you'll see in the bottom left corner, that's a video of a live event we do that Francesca mentioned that Discord, because it's a sort of game, it is used sometimes by gamers. It's fully built out with, video and audio streaming capabilities. I mean, there are different ways to describe it, but that's what it does. And sort of early on, one of the things we tested is, if you live feed forum into the space, is there a conversation that can be created there, that you're like listening to the audio there and chatting around it. That never really became the thing, but it was an experiment we tried. And the other thing is, like, we now use it to we have used it to live stream live events video, and then have people sort of like ride along. We did a movie watch. We watched, what movie did we watch, Francesca?
What
The
movie
share
did we watch?
the share movie.
Moonstruck.
Moonstruck.
Yeah. Yeah, we
That,
did a live
that
watch
actually, I
along.
would say that didn't actually go. That was a learning opportunity. It didn't become like, oh, we're going to do a bunch more of these, but it created. There's a video capability that for public broadcasters, um, can that we have used and could be used for more experimentation.
And I wanted to note, I see, Whitney, that you had a question about the number of people. I had a statistic saying that 65% of the survey respondents were more willing to become supporters because of our Discord. We actually built our Discord community as public access first, partly because of what Ethan was just describing of this being a grand experiment. We wanted to see what was working and what wasn't in terms of getting people engaged in the community before asking them perhaps to assign a dollar amount to it. Podcasters and some of these other private models certainly do it differently. Like, there may be a free tiered access and then a subscriber tiered access. We're still experimenting with where that sweet spot is, but the benefits that we have built have been almost exclusively in this realm of like show production and value add to our content, as opposed to like monetary at this point.
That was one of the reasons we were interested in it, was that, like I said, there are podcasters and others who use it as this like tiered membership. We have not explored that, but I think as all of us grapple with what is the right um business revenue model going forward, that is very much a thing we would be thinking about, and I would encourage anyone doing a similar thing to also think about, because there is real. I mean, as Chad mentioned, that there is this sort of like tool set of like podcasters who give people access to Discord by giving their Patreon. That is our business model in a different form. So if we can, there feels like there's a lot of ways that we can take advantage of that well also.
I want to take this opportunity to open it up to some more questions. I know I kind of skimmed through some of the things we've tried. Would love to talk about any of those in more detail. I also just wanted to point out that we have this guide. So we built a digital resource of how to create a digital community for your newsroom. The lessons in there, we did obviously we built ours in Discord, and so our some of the advice in there is Discord specific, but we tried to write it in a way that applies across many different platforms. There are other ways to do this. You can use Substack, you can use Patreon, you can use some combination of outreach to your existing Reddit communities. There are many ways to do this with a different resource model. So we tried to just share the most information and lessons that we'd gathered. Um, I'll stop sharing my screen for now because it looks like Amber's also posted the resource guide, but please feel free to hop in with any questions.
Actually, while we're doing this, I was wondering if you could maybe leave the screen up, go back to that sort of the stats page, so people could kind of look at some of the statistics on how you were measuring success. Just I thought that was an interesting one, and it went by a little fast for me. So why not let
Yes.
people linger on
Well,
that
while
one?
you're doing
So
that, Francesca, I'll also mention like uh Brian talks about you can use roles to make tiered levels in Discord. One of the other things that we are now doing is in our Discord, um, we've now stepped back in moderating it ourselves as much and have like encouraged the community to take on some of those roles. And this like connects back to like what membership puzzle research and a lot of other research from like the last 10 our members or our audience to do to build membership, and sort of playing a role as a moderator in a Discord, or playing, participating in the Discord in this such and such a way is like an additional, besides, hey, there's this community, we would love for that to be the way that we encourage you to monetarily become members. There is opportunities here to explore sort of other levels of membership, because it does require community. It requires people to step up in different sorts of roles.
Yeah.
do you
And
guys do
actually,
asks? Do you do asks on Discord?
Yeah,
like ask me anything type events, like AMAs, things like
Uh,
that.
yeah.
no, like requests to
Membership.
become a
We
member,
we have
membership asks.
tried tying. The extends experimental tried during pledge drives to do asks and track it. It has not been. We haven't we haven't solved the revenue puzzle doing that. Um, but the thing that is interesting is not even the ones where we're tying it to sort of like a broader org-wide pledge drive. When the things that are most exciting for us are when a particularly strong day of content, or actually a strong day of conversation, we will get the posts like, I have unprompted become a member today, or upped my membership today because this shows me the value of what you're doing. And so we haven't figured out how to harness that, Chad. Like that's actually where there are people unprompted talking about the value of this, and we're still exploring how to harness that.
Got it.
Yeah,
Uh,
just to build off of that, we've done a few different things to uh, capture some data around that pipeline, like the number of people who are saying that they're going to support us and they want to give in our Discord community, and then how that translates to actual donations. It's harder. It turned out to be logistically harder for us to capture a clear number because of the way that we run our pledge um, drives at KQED, because we're pledging on so many different platforms. And these are, of course, our community of super users. So they're people who are listening to the online stream, they're listening to the shows, they're listening to the podcast recordings, they're doing all this stuff. So it was a little hard to capture whether they like saw it on Discord and that's what made them give. Unless they volunteer, like Ethan has said, information, which does happen on our Discord quite often. Like, just love this conversation. I want you to know I gave $100 to KQED today. Obviously, that's not the norm for everybody, but that is a thing that people volunteer and post. Um, though, is what is more effective in terms of doing pledge and asks on a digital space like this. At first, we tried copying some of the same techniques and models that we use for our on-air pledge drives, like recorded spots and pre-written asks from staff members about what it is that they value about KQED and the work that they're doing. And I think what we learned was that the most effective way to get people to respond to those, whether we're able to assign a monetary value or not, like the response in terms of emoji reactions and back and forth, like comments of support, was to make it feel more digitally native. Like just coming in and saying, hey guys, today's show was so great. Here's a fun behind the scene moment from me as a producer. As you probably know, we're in a pledge drive. I'm sharing at other places. You supporting us really does help us keep this work going. Hits different than somebody like posting a pre-recorded video that feels less personal. So I think that's what we learned too, is just like to use the language and the behavioral norms of these digital spaces where you're actually reaching people.
Super smart.
I saw that there's some comments in the chat. So
Yeah. Do you want to tackle them or you want me to tee them up?
let's see. I think I've got, I'll do my best to read and talk at the same time. So Zach, you were asking how often we found ourselves seeding the Discord community with conversation versus like how often it's happening among community members organically. I would say that this is for any new project, it's a bell curve, for sure. Like we had a lot of staff energy seeding the conversation at the beginning, and at a certain point, we kind of crested into this plateau where there were enough community members who were the extroverts and folks who were willing to post and generate conversation themselves that they started to find each other and connect with one another. And then that kind of snowballs into more commentary for everybody else. Um, Maybe it would be helpful. I know we're staring at this particular metric, but I wanted to maybe like talk a little bit more about understanding kind of our engagement stuff because a lot of this was new for me. I am not a marketing person. I had to learn a ton from our engagement colleagues. My first uh, love is journalism, and that's what brought me to this work. And so I kind of learned how to think about the way that, like, what good engagement and conversation in a digital community looks like. And I wanted to share some of that for those of you who also maybe are less familiar. Um, So I don't know if that quite answered your question yet, Zach, but I have another
Oh, can I
slideshow
let me the
resource.
one thing that occurred to me when you were talking about that, Francesca, is that um I think maybe this is more of a hope than anything else. The hope was that organic stuff would be talking about cute dogs and other fun things, which sometimes it was, and creating spaces that people could share their pets and other things was great. But the organic, maybe as often as not, was actually the hard stuff that was, it's like, why aren't you covering X? Or it was questions like that were like then would then go into organic discussions that were oftentimes actually needed more moderation because they would challenge sort of community norms and community trust and that sort of stuff. So we've had to navigate. There's a lot to be said about that, but we had to navigate through that as the sort of like creating political discussion spaces or other spaces that people want to have that discussion ended up being one of the places that we would have to navigate through.
This is a kind of a visualization, and it looks like maybe the formatting's a little wonky. I wasn't planning to share this slide, so you all are getting a little a first draft version. But I did want to point out that one of the things that's helpful to think about in terms of whether your community activity is successful, because I like to think of this, and I wrote this in our guide. I use the metaphor of hosting a party. Like your role is to make people feel welcome in a digital community, not necessarily to keep them perpetually engaged in conversation, just to make them feel safe enough to start those conversations with each other and to realize that they have points of connection with other people. Inside digital communities, this is a framework that's been around since the early era of the internet, where there's this idea that 90% of the people who are in any digital community in any kind of online space are passive participants. They're reading your comments, they're consuming the conversations of others, and they're getting value out of that, or they wouldn't be there. But they may not be offering their own content to help fuel the community itself. You have then and these numbers have changed a little bit. You'll see different things cited. That's why I've got a range here. But 9 to 15% are the people who are actually posting things, actually offering some active participation. And then the people who are driving the vast majority of conversation is a much smaller fraction, that 1 to 5% in you might think of this as like the influencers of your community. So these are the people who are the most chatty, who are going to do some tone setting. And I think in the early days, did is we put a lot of staff effort into cultivating and building relationships with that 1 to 5% of chatty role models for this space, so that they would then, through their orbit, entice more of the active participants to join in. And then, like, honestly, you got to be kind of chill with the idea that maybe 90% of the people there aren't going to talk to you. That's not the way that they prefer to engage online. I'd encourage you to think about how you like to engage online. Are you the person who's always replying in comments? If not, then like I think it's humbling to remember that like that's probably pretty normal for many people. But we still like, for example, my fandom stuff, Ethan shared his, so I'll be vulnerable as well. I love the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. I love poring over chats about watch parties. I love getting into the multiple fractious Reddit groups. There are multiple ones depending on which characters you like the best, or which like so I feel like what I get out of those is not so much necessarily talking to others, but like being able to consume how other people are talking about this thing that I really like. And that is a reason that people are coming to us as well.
I think that that's like, I mean, Kurt's mentioned in the chat, Francesca, you're saying, but I just like want to like double down. I think we were trying to report back when we would report back to funders or just internally about
Oh,
how healthy this space was. There was this push to be like, this many people are interacting like that. The drive was to get massive engagement in that way. And I think that what we learned was that's healthy and good. You want that. But that is not the healthy, engaged space is not just 100 people yelling at each other. There are a lot of people getting massive value, and we are providing value to them as a community by allowing them to just consume and listen that way. And that I think I found myself early on trying to be like, why aren't more of the why are there so many passive listeners? And it's like that's actually how forum as a show works. Like maybe we need to embrace that more in spaces like this.
um, Kathleen, I saw that you had a question about developing our moderation guidelines. This is that link, the playbook link that we shared, and we have a whole section on here that talks about how to design and how we came up with our moderation guidelines. We shamelessly stole from all the brilliant things that other people are already doing to build these frameworks. Like we have people have done great work already to figure out how to cut through some of the toxicity of unmoderated online spaces. So start by looking to the models that you think already work well. And I'll just kind of skim through these, but the collaborative process, the part that I think was really wonderful was we created a system for workshopping and adjusting those guidelines. So once a rule this will happen in our space even still to this day, where people get into some kind of because we allow politics discussions in our space, which I think many people will say is an optional and not
Maybe we
necessarily
shouldn't do
desirable
that.
choice. But we found it to be, we just felt that it was disingenuous to say this is a politics-free zone when we're a show that talks about public affairs and often political policy and like cultural developments in our listenership. So one of the ways that we design more guardrails for people to converse about these things was to agree to some rules of engagement rather than rules of content. So not to say you can't use these words, you can't mention these, not aligned with our ethics either. But we want to make sure that this is a space that feels safe. And so we created some behavioral guidelines around like how to engage. I thought that a very simple, basic way to start was like, hey, just don't be a jerk, right? Like that's baseline one, don't be a jerk. But it turns out over time, that's not like a really clear directive to a lot of people. The behavior of what makes you a jerk or not is really subjective. So we have fleshed out more articulation around what specifically we mean about what feels like non-jerk behavior. And that was something that I really built in collaboration with our community members as people flagged behavior that wasn't working for them and like helped me come up with language that felt more accurate. And now we have a method where if our rules are going to be adjusted, we ask the community members if they have a suggestion, like they want to say they want to change a rule. They'll propose it. We ask for at least like 3 thumbs up from other people who share this desire. And then we will, the staff moderators will make either ask for more information and like kind of like dive into what the motive is for changing this rule and if it's needed, or just adopt it if it feels like a healthy one that many community members are behind.
I can take Christina's question. She is, and Francesca, we both can address it. But Christina, you asked, did you have a target demographic when starting on Discord? Did you see any interesting trends with that? And did Discord's audience seem to align with Forum's pre-existing one, or is this more a fraction of peeps? That's a great question because we sort of, we erroneously. We're like Discord, the demographic of Discord is much younger. And this is gonna be where we're gonna get our younger audience, gonna be this other audience that we're gonna be exposing to Forum. Well, one, that's actually not how Discord works, right? It's not like you log into the breadth of Discord and then it's like it funnels you to this thing. It's like ends up being this is a thing that exists, go to it. But then also the audience in our Discord mapped much closer to our existing audience than we had initially posited. I don't think that's failing necessarily, but it's definitely like okay, how do we serve that audience specifically in different ways? It is different than the broadcast audience, but not in this like fundamental, oh, they're all young gamers that are coming to it.
Yeah, these are some of, we did a side-by-side comparison to a broadcast audience survey that we did in 2018, and then some of the demographics surveys that we did in our Discord community. And like Ethan said, we didn't discover that it was like this wildly different patchwork of people. I will also add that, like, I think that we have not experimented enough yet with how to do targeted outreach to reach some groups that we want to further build out. But this was just kind of passive growth through sharing the space through our existing forum channels. But what we did find was that we were reaching some aspects of our like I guess like some of the communities that we were hoping to in a greater percentage than forums broadcast. So you'll see, like much of public radio, our listenership of forum is largely white. We're seeing a little bit more racial diversity in our Discord community, which we thought was interesting in some core areas and in others not. Like, for example, Latino listeners not really represented in our Discord community. I think that deserves some like additional exploration. By age, we were capturing we got an older number of users on Discord than I was personally expecting. Look at this percentage of people who are over the age of 45 who are really enthused about using our Discord community. But we also found that we were reaching this younger demographic that had previously been kind of condensed into a much smaller percentage of our broadcast listenership. And then a little bit more gender balance and parity in our Discord community. And we changed some of the demographics language between these surveys, so it's not a one-to-one, but we're just seeing some slight movement in those demographics.
I'll note one of the things that when we went to Discord early on was the barrier to entry to use it. Like we had actually thought about um, would you do this in a Facebook group, right? Like I think many of us were in Facebook groups. And besides that, it's like you're subject to the algorithm and you don't own it's like it's like a different sort of mentality. The goal was to experiment and grow in this new space. That was like why we decided to go here. But I use this as an example. My mom, one of those 75-year-old audience members, was a member of the La Mesa Gardening Group on Facebook, and the La Mesa Gardening Group, good for them, said we're going to go to um, Discord, and she immediately dropped out. So the fact that because she could not figure out Discord because it is there's a barrier to entry. So I do think Francesca's note about how interesting it is that we did have a little bit older audience than you would think in this space, I think is valuable note. David, I'm gonna take your note, which is that considering recent funding woes, it seems like KQED values this community, which is great. How do we get management to continue to buy in? Well, one, I'm management, so that helps. Two, I actually think this is what I was trying to say at the top. I think, and maybe this applies more for public radio than public television, but I imagine this is sort of a similar question we are all grappling with. Um, as someone who worked closely in a number of different projects with small public media companies around California who had or about thereabouts, who have been told for the last 10 years that they need to become the sort of news portal, news site for their area, and have been investing their resources in their human resources in doing digital stories, doing photos, trying to figure out a way to create that news site. I think the funding woes, my guess, this is just my guess, but my guess is going to be where do we put our limited resources? And they're going to go, we have not figured out how to either grow an audience digitally, and even if they figured out an audience, they certainly have not figured out how to grow revenue. So if we have 5 people and we are investing 2 of them in digital, and we have to make hard decisions, I think that there's going to be a likelihood that they're going to invest in their core, their broadcast, and they're going to drop the investment in digital. And what this does is it allows for a representation of what you're trying to do as a community service provider for that community that requires you want to have some touch. It's not just like spin up this Discord server and forget about it. But the investment by that staff is not, hey, we need a homepage editor and a digital producer and a producer. Like there is a way that this sort of investment in a digital community space could become that digital representation of your public media outlet in this period of limited resources. So I actually think the answer to that question, David, is actually this might be the option you choose given limited resources, because you're choosing this instead of building out a more fully featured, resource intensive news site. That's just a theory I have as people are struggling with the new funding reality.
I was showing some of these slides too. I wanted to kind of come back to some of the engagement learnings in the context of that question. We I'll be frankly, a digital community like the exact one that we built, a Discord community that requires some like active moderation, even as we've built partnerships with the public to moderate for themselves. It is a little labor intensive. So that is not necessarily the model that has to be your model. But like Ethan was saying, I think using these spaces or finding scaled ways to do this for your newsroom, like, do you need to have like 10 different channels to talk about like many different things as forums, as KQED's digital space has? No, maybe you just have one channel and it's a place where you talk with your listeners once a week about something that you're publishing. The thing that I wanted to point out, or what feels really exciting about this as we're investing in it to whatever degree we have the resources and the time to do now, is that you're building an audience that belongs to you and that you have like a stickiness and a way of contacting in the future. You could almost think of this more like a newsletter audience than a traditional social media following. Social media platforms like Twitter, Blue Sky, well, I guess maybe Blue Sky is a bad example. Twitter, Instagram, some of these platforms, right? Facebook, they all have algorithms that change. I'm sure that many of us have experienced this ourselves, where the platform shifts and then your engagement strategy has to shift with it. Part of the benefit of building like closed system communities like this is that when you reach your audience members, when you bring them in, when they discover that this place is the place for them, like this is some metrics that show like how successfully are you reaching the people who really want to stick around. Once you feel like you are building the community of people who really want to be here because they know and understand what you're doing, then they're part of this capsule that you can go back to and engage with more thoroughly or less thoroughly over time. So in times when you don't have the bandwidth to invest in that community as much, scale it back. In times when you have the resources and the staff, space and time and energy to engage more thoroughly, like scale it up. Try some things to see if you can get results for that, like additional investment, and find the place that seems like it balances those results for you. I think this is sort of touching on another question that was in there that you had about, sorry, I'm forgetting who asked this, but like how we did our experimentation. Some of the early stuff was very organic and it was not very organized. And as we got further along and we started to understand the value like this, we started to test like if we put energy into doing this specific kind of engagement, what happens? If we do energy into this specific kind of engagement, like what happens? And then we were culling the ones that felt like they were more resource intensive than they were yielding like the results we wanted.
I'll take two. Cognizant of time, I'll take two that are quick hitters, and you can reach out to Francesca or I after for any further conversation or questions or whatever. One was Jesse asks about, does it have any conscious overlap with membership because of funding cuts, where you don't need to do much Discord fundraising as much. We mentioned this before, which is that we were viewing. We didn't make this it wasn't a strong goal, but figuring out what sort of revenue play against our Discord in the future is something that is front of mind now. Could a Discord access or some level of Discord access be part of some tiered membership package, things like that? We have seen some membership, both on our intentional during pledge drives, we were pushing membership, and then organic people going, I became a member. We've seen a little bit of that, but there feels like there's a lot of potential there just because that is the way other Discords operate pretty normally. And then Tori asks about have we given any talk about efforts to sign up for KQED newsletters or share their emails? If not, are you giving members any way to engage more deeply with KQED besides forum? One of the things Francesca mentioned is that this did launch very specifically for forum at the very beginning, but then grew. We realized very quickly, maybe not very quickly, we realized over the course of doing this that there was actually real value outside of forum, and we changed it from the forum Discord to being the KQED Discord, which allowed some of our properties that are newsletters, Political Breakdown, podcasts, Close All Tabs, to experiment and try to grow their similar sort of their pocket within the KQED Discord, and we've seen successes and challenges in all sorts of things. So there now it is no longer just a forum Discord. The idea is it is a KQED one that is trying to create communities across KQED properties, not just for forum.
And I guess,
Oh, go ahead, and then I'm going to start wrapping us up.
oh yeah, no, sorry. I just wanted to add on to that because I think one of the most important things we learned bringing in other KQED properties too was to think about how a digital community works in conjunction with what you already have in terms of ways that you reach your audience. So Ethan mentioned Close All Tabs. That's a podcast that is fairly new in the KQED system. It's about internet culture. We thought, what a perfect fit for Discord. listeners are already internet native listening to this podcast, it'll be a great thing to experiment bringing into our space. I think one of the key things there is Discord is about digital communities in general, I think are about deepening your relationship with listeners, finding that active participation. Um, you still need other media forms to broaden your reach. So what we did with Close All Tabs is they have a social media presence. They have the podcast that they're already publishing. We put plugs to join our Discord community into all these places where they were already trying to go out and find new audience members. And then once they arrive into Discord right then, they have like the draw there, or the value is that they have a higher tier of access to the people making that show. They have access to the host, Morgan, who posts a custom meme once a week that kind of previews the next week's podcast episode. Things like that are sort of like the way that we've thought about the different purposes of these kinds of internet spaces.
You're muted, Chip.
Yeah, of course. The one time I mute in the entire webinar is the time I decide to interject. There was a question back up in the chat we skipped over from Bryant, asking if you all had played around at all with Twitch, or did you compare the two? Did you look at experimenting with Twitch at all in this?
We haven't. Twitch does integrate with Discord, which is very exciting, and there's lots of room, I think, for further experimentation there. We, because we have internal structure already set up for live streaming events hosted at KQED onto YouTube through our AV booth, we ended up actually having the AV team stream directly into Discord's video webinar functions. But I think a much like again a less resourced way to do that is to find these platforms that talk to each other really easily, where you don't need a whole engineering team to like do a broadcast.
Very cool. Francesca, thank you. Ethan, thank you. It was a uh, action-packed hour, actually. We really blasted through that. So I very much appreciate this. And again, as someone whose entire team uses Discord as our sort of office water cooler, it was fascinating to kind of hear it used in a more professional capacity. So I would encourage everybody, that try it out as like a Slack replacement. Maybe that's a great way to start to get to understand the features and get to feel it from a more kind of native perspective. So we're going to wrap it up. Everyone, remember, NEDA virtual conferences next week. We've got 5 sessions that are focused on innovation. You can check those out. Yeah, thank you, everybody. We'll see you in October, probably on October 23rd.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks so much.